All right, everybody. I hope you guys are doing well. It's April the 15th, 2024, and I want to show something. Uh, let's see. Gotta see which one I'm. Okay, he's looking both different directions. So it's this one. Okay. So I am zoomed in quite far.
Hear any argument from the state on whether or not the court's.
Okay, so I am zoomed in quite close to the video, and I to get the proper amount of video quality video, it was taking so long to download the whole day's worth of testimony. So I didn't want to lose the quality of the video. So I'm gonna make a better copy. I'm gonna let it download tonight while I'm sleeping. But this was so interesting to me. I wanted to go ahead and get this on the record before we got another day of testimony. Now, what they are discussing here is they're trying to get in evidence
as being irrelevant, and Mr. Pryor, I understand you wanted to get a further either clarification or another.
Okay, so this is a ruling that the judge has already provided, and it has to do with the information from 2007 regarding Alex Cox and the death of Joe Ryan. So this was rather interesting anyway, so that he's already issued a ruling, said it's not coming in. Now they're back, and this is before the day's testimony began. And Pryor's asking for to revisit the topic. I want you to watch Chad Daybell closely.
A ruling that was made last week on evidence as it related to the defense request to bring in testimony or evidence relating to Joe Ryan. The court made a ruling last week that it was inadmissible as being irrelevant, and Mr. Pryor, I understand you wanted to get a further either clarification or another opportunity to argue that point. Is that something you want to argue this morning?
Judge, I would like to argue it. Judge, would the court prefer I go to the podium, or can I argue from here?
I think it's best if you just stay at council table, so
Okay.
the microphone will pick that up.
And may I, Judge, proceed?
Yes.
Judge, it's really a two-prong argument. One, I wanted to make a record of the fact that the court had ruled that the evidence relating to Joseph Ryan and that Alex Cox had committed an aggravated assault felony on Joseph Ryan, and that Mr. Ryan feared for his life. That was in 2007. Judge, I have a probable cause affidavit from that particular jurisdiction relaying the facts of that particular incident. I would point out, Judge, that part of our argument is that Alex Cox's modus operandi was to protect Lori Vallow whenever there was any sort of discernible threat towards her or any kind of threat towards her. Alex Cox would come to the rescue and engage in this kind of conduct.
So he's making the case that Alex Cox is going to act as a lone wolf without anybody else really knowing about it.
As an example, Judge, this is our position is that's exactly what happened with Charles Vallow. That's exactly.
Now keep your eyes really close on Chad Daybell. Watch very closely. Look at his body language, his facial expression.
What happened with Brandon Boudreaux. And those occurred in, I believe, 2019. Approximately 12 years earlier in 2007, the same modus operandi. And the difficulty, Judge, and the relevance in my mind is that we are looking at a third husband. The third husband, this was just not some random act. This was a third husband of Lori Vallow who was subjected and put in a position of fear. And then the fourth husband from the defense, and I think the state would agree, Alex Cox perpetrated a murder upon the fourth husband, Charles Vallow. And the modus operandi, Judge, and that's where I think this comes in, is that Alex Cox is a protector of Lori Vallow.
This is it. Pay close attention, Chad Daybell. He looks like the cat that ate the canary. And in a minute, you're going to see John Pryor try to hide that look for himself. Chad's not as good at this as John Pryor. So keep your eyes on Chad. That's how I even saw this, is because I was doing a video on Chad Daybell's body language. And when I stumbled along this, I guess in my other video, I'll play it where I realized it. I was in total shock. So just keep watching.
And I realized that the state had got a transcript of my opening statement. I didn't recall seeing a motion or an order requesting that they be allowed to do that. But lo and behold, I was provided a transcript of my opening statement, and I did adhere to that, Judge. And I don't think it was something that I have to file a 404B to ask permission to do that. Quite to the contrary, 404B requires a prosecuting attorney to file motions, and it's at the end of 404B that's required. The state does, or the defense does not have the burden to do that. And in my mind, this was relevant, and it was relevant to Alex Cox's behavior, modus operandi, in how he took care of, and he was the protector, or whatever adjective you want to use, of Lori Vallow.
Okay, so he's saying the prosecution has a burden if they want to talk about this information. I do not, as the defense. I don't have that burden.
So at this point, Judge, I just wanted to make a record that that's what my position is.
He's making a record. He's going to get the defense and the judge on there, but watch Chad Daybell's face. He looks smug as hell, and John Pryor his smugness will come out.
All right.
Watch
I'll hear
Chad.
any argument from the state on whether or not the court's previous ruling excluding that evidence should stand or be reconsidered.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state agrees with the court's previous ruling. We don't think that this set of facts meets the 401 test that of relevancy. It has no tendency to make.
Now they're talking about relevance of the information that Joe Ryan was murdered by Alec.
A fact more or less probable than it would be without the evidence in this case. The reason for that is that this is so attenuated by time. I believe this was a 2007 incident dealing with an individual who, other than being the father of one of the victims in this case, has no other connection to this defendant. So you have this very long section of time in between that creates this attenuation.
Watch
We
Chad.
don't believe, we think there's going to be a foundational issue as well.
Watch
I don't
Chad.
think a PC affidavit in and of itself comes in. We believe that's hearsay. There needs to be a declarant to talk.
Did you see him shake his head? Watch him shake his head. Listen what they're talking about at the time that he shakes his head. Watch.
We think there's going to be a foundational issue as well. I don't think a PC affidavit in and of itself comes in. We believe that's hearsay. There needs to be a declarant to talk about it. And so based on those two, based on that, and on just there's a case, Pomrenke versus State, 169 Idaho 474, and I think it applies here. The holding there is that proffered evidence is irrelevant if it tends to disprove or disprove a fact of consequence only through speculative inferences. And I think that's where this is speculative inferences, that because Alex Cox may or may not have done something to Joe Ryan back in 2007, that he is somehow that somehow removes this defendant's guilt in this case. So we do not think it passes the 401 test. And again, we think there's a foundational issue. So we'd ask the court to just affirm its previous ruling.
And Judge, if I could respond just
Yes.
ever so briefly. Judge, there is no time limit on bringing up these allegations. Briefly.
Back in 2000, because Alex Cox, that's where this is speculative inferences that speculative relevant and Idaho 474, and I think it applies here. The holding there is that proffered evidence is irrelevant if it tends to disprove or disprove a fact of consequence only through speculative inferences. And I think that's where this is disprove
I didn't go
here.
back
The
far
holding
enough. Hold on.
And so based on say,
Watch
you're gonna
Daybell.
there needs to be a declarant to talk about it. And so based on those two you're well, I don't think
This is
Section.
crazy.
section of time in between that
Watch.
creates this attenuation. We think there's going to be a foundational issue as well. I don't think a PC affidavit in and of itself comes in. We believe that's hearsay. There needs to be a declarant.
Hearsay.
If it in and of itself comes in, we believe that's hearsay. There needs to be a declarant to talk
Shakes
about it.
his head.
Comes in, we believe that's hearsay.
When Rob says we believe it's hearsay, he shakes his head, he sort of laughs, and then he looks at Wood like he could eat him for breakfast.
We think there's going to be a foundational issue as well. I don't
Also, notice John Pryor smiling, or smirking is more accurate. Watch Pryor.
We think there's going to be a
You see it? See that smug little kind of little half smile? Now, put your eyes back on Chad Daybell and watch. You got to watch so closely to see it.
foundational issue as well. I don't think a PC affidavit in and of itself comes in. We believe that's hearsay. There needs to be a
Right
declarant
there.
to talk about it. And so based on
You see that? Wow, what is this? What is this?
so you have this
What?
very long section of time in between that creates this attenuation. We think there's going to be a foundational.
See that smile on John Pryor? Watch him. Put your eyes on John Pryor.
This attenuation. We think there's going to be a foundational issue as well.
Wow, that is crazy. Okay, so John Pryor smiles. He ducks his head to hide it, I think, and he begins scribbling on his piece of paper. He's not writing anything. He's just keeping his pen in the same spot on the paper. So he's trying to look busy, right? Now, turn your attention to Chad Daybell. When Rob Wood says it's hearsay, he shakes his head no, and then he gets a smile on his face, and he looks at Rob Wood like he could kill him.
I don't think a PC affidavit in and of itself comes in. We believe that's hearsay. There needs to be a declarant to talk about it. And so based on
Now, the last time we saw this, people,
there needs to be a declarant to talk about it.
look at that look. Look at there. The last time we saw anything remotely like this was in the Johnny Depp case. When Amber Heard brought up her name, Johnny Depp's old girlfriend brought up her name, and then they were able to have her come and give testimony, correct? I believe what we just watched, I think Lori Vallow is going to be called to the stand, and I think she is going to talk about the murder of Joe Ryan and that her brother did it. I think that's what's happening here. And they've already gotten her agreement to do this. Let's watch this one more time. If you can come up with an alternate explanation for this behavior, I'm all ears. But you can't ignore this. It's all over his face. You know, this is the guy that never changes. He never moves his body. He never changes his facial expression. But right here in this one little section, when they're talking about getting information in that basically becomes his, I guess, potentially exculpatory evidence, right? Watch both of them. There's a real reason for what they're doing here. So we'll start first by watching John Pryor.
This very long section of time in between that creates this attenuation. We think there's going to be.
Did you see it? Oh my God, it's crazy to watch. Now turn your attention to Chad Daybell. And as soon as you hear the word hearsay, Chad it almost imperceptibly shakes his head no, has a really smug grin on his face, and looks at Rob Wood like, you are an asshole and you are going to be so shocked at the little trick we're going to pull. Watch this.
A foundational issue as well. I don't think a PC affidavit in and of itself comes in. We believe that's hearsay. There needs to be a declarant to talk about it.
We believe it's hearsay. We need a declarant to talk about it. If Lori Vallow has agreed to be the declarant, if she's coming in and taking the stand and saying, my brother did do this to my third husband, and he killed my fourth husband, and I had nothing to do with it. I think that's what we're watching here. So I wanted to go ahead and get this out tonight before any more testimony comes through tomorrow. And I'll wait for the rest of the video to download so we can get a nice, good, zoomed in copy. I'm going to take out all of the black surrounding premium sign into tub buddy and all that. Get it right up front and center so we can really, really see what it is that they're up to. And you will see that John Pryor, during this exchange, that he's actually not writing. He looks like he's writing. He's not writing. He's drawing like circles and scribbles right in the same spot. So this was big for them. There was a lot of emotion tied up in this for them. And I believe what it's going to come down to is the information regarding Joe Ryan is going to come in by way of Lori Vallow taking the stand, and as a not as hearsay, but as a participant, and that she'll be able to talk about Joe Ryan. All right. Y'all have a great evening. And I know there's a lot going on, lots of people live and whatnot, so I'm not going to dominate your time. I hope you find this interesting. I'll come up with a better video for it tomorrow where you can see it a little bit more clearly. Okay. Y'all have a good evening. Bye.